I know I want to be a leader. Well, sometimes not sometimes, I'll correct that, all of the time we need to manage. All of the time we need to manage people, we need to manage projects, we need to manage our own tasks.
An impressive career spanning various industries. His journey in HR is marked by significant roles such as Head of People and Culture at SciLeads, Head of Learning and Development at ROCO, Regional Learning and Development Lead at Next, Regional Lead at Domino's Pizza Group, UK and Ireland, and Core Skills Training Area Manager at Costa Coffee Island.
And then obviously the pandemic hit. I hate the fact that I've had to talk about that. The pandemic hit and I decided I was going to go into tech. And that broke my heart a little bit because I was excited, but still broke my heart that I left an organisation that I loved and still very loyal to this day.
In this episode, we meet Rob Rees, now the Group Head of People and Culture at the prestigious Hastings Hotel Group. You are listening to the Pecha Kucha podcast.
We'll start with the question we ask every guest on the podcast. What does success look like or feel like to you?
Feel like, JP, is a really, really good question. Success is, for me, I know it sounds corny, but having fun. Life is too short to be bored and not push your boundaries. I think family, first and foremost, seeing them thrive, seeing them have fun, seeing them happy, healthy and thriving is obviously really important. Mm-hmm. But also success is, for me, about other people as well, because we all have a responsibility as human beings to the society that we are part of, the workplaces that we are part of, the families that we are part of, the friendships that we're part of. So success is having a positive impact and helping others to achieve success, whatever that looks like for them too, in a small way, that we enable them to do that.
It's always really interesting how everyone has their own version. Sean, my colleague who does the podcast with us as well, we were at an event last night and we were chatting about this podcast, and we were saying that this first question is always one that we love hearing because I believe Hannah, who we had on the podcast before, with a big background in trauma and supporting people through trauma, through coaching. And she talked about this idea of success being getting through the day some days. But I think that we always go to family, don't we? It's always almost legacy. It's a conversation that we've had quite a few times with different leaders around when you talk beyond effective leadership. It's, what does success look like in that role? Because obviously we're talking personally, but it sort of interweaves, I think. When we have been in leadership roles for a long period of time, it almost just becomes part of us. Mm-hmm. And so when I think of success, it's very interesting. I'm similar. I think it's family. I lean into that. So it's very nice to hear that insight.
And I think, JP, just if we think about the intrinsic, you mentioned success in business, success in leadership, no matter what we try and achieve success in, we can always find what the root cause of that is, and that's being happy, healthy, and having as we're sat in Belfast City, having the crack. Yeah. I think is really important, because ultimately we've got a limited time on this earth. Let's enjoy it while we can.
Yeah, totally agree. I totally agree. You have a strong background in learning and development across various sectors. Could you talk us through your transition or your journey from frontline roles in retail to tech and now leading the HR strategies with the prestigious Hastings Hotel Group?
Yeah, well, I am incredibly proud to work for Hastings Hotels. I think the leadership and the vision even gives me goosebumps just talking about it. I'm insanely proud to be in the position I am today. I suppose I am only here because of the leaders that I've had, good and bad, because sometimes you learn more from a bad leader than you do a good leader in terms of your own leadership style. But certainly from the early doors of working in retail or in coffee and that environment, you really have to think on your feet. And I started an operational role and quickly became aware that actually I could show people how to achieve their goals, their objectives. And I think it was about 18 or 20 weeks that I was the store manager of a coffee chain in Belfast City Airport before I then got promoted to a training manager. So I travelled the length and breadth of the island, showing people how to make a cappuccino, how to make a latte, and that's something that stuck with me to this day. My passion for coffee, I love the art of it, and I can transcend that passion to other people. And that quickly unlocked something that, I'm really actually quite good at this and actually find it fun. Mm-hmm. So that then led me to formalise my credentials, if you like, mm-hmm. And do some training in it before then moving to a broader role, a bigger role for a fast food company that's you've probably had lots of, and I've had lots of, and everybody knows, to teach people how to make pizza, but also then explore really, or start to explore, what does it take to be a great manager? And one of the things that I quickly came to realize is that we talk a lot about leadership. We talk a lot about being an inspiring leader, but we've forgotten about the core basic fundamentals of how to manage. Mm. And it almost becomes a dirty word. Oh, you're a manager.
Yep.
Oh no, I want to be a leader. Well, sometimes not sometimes, I'll correct that, all of the time we need to manage. Mm-hmm. All of the time we need to manage people. We need to manage projects. We need to manage our own tasks. And that quickly became a focus. And I had a really great leader who I was speaking to last night, for example, from that brought me into that company. And she was a real mentor. She continues to be a mentor to me. And I think that's been one of the fundamental things that have lifted me and really unlocked the passion for, as passionate as I was about coffee, to being as passionate about, right, okay, how can we help people be great managers? Because great managers will naturally become great leaders because they'll role model behavior that you want them to role model. So that then sprang on her career moved, and probably not uncommon, I moved with her to a retail organisation, which again allowed me to really hone my skills in talent management more strategically. So thinking about that talent elbow, where are our top talent, where's our up and coming talent, but also not forgetting that the backbone of organisations in general, especially the organisation that I was in at the time, our expert talent are somebody that, you know what, they've been in that job for 10 years, they do an absolutely phenomenal job, but why are they not a focus for us in our L&D strategy or our L&D plans? Because we're always focusing on the people who are up and coming. And that was something that was really well received in terms of how do we help those experts become not just experts, but mentors? How do they share knowledge? How do they spearhead projects? How do they push beyond their boundaries just because they don't want upward trajectory? And this is where the whole sidewards, squiggly careers, all of those things came to life for this retail organisation. And then obviously the pandemic hit. I hate the fact that I've had to talk about that. The pandemic hit and I decided I was going to go into tech. And that broke my heart a little bit because I was excited, but still broke my heart that I left an organisation that I loved and still very loyal to this day. So I went into tech, loved that challenge. Initially started as a consultant and then went to work for a client as a full-time employee. Or not a client, sorry, I went to work for a tech company full-time. Mm-hmm. And then I got a bit fed up with remote work. That's probably an unpopular opinion. But I wanted to be out and showing. And then I came and met my leader now, James McGinn, and quickly thought I want to work for this guy, and there's not many people that I want to work for, but I definitely want to work for James, and I had that quite revelation quite quickly. And I've been here a few months. I've been here since October last year, and every day is a school day.
Yeah.
Every day is a challenge. Every day I leave with a smile on my face because I work with some exceptionally talented people, whether they are chefs who create the most amazing food, so much so that I'm now trying to not eat in work because,
Been there. Yeah.
either whether it's a poached egg or it's a 5-star tasting menu, these chefs are incredibly talented.
Yeah.
Whether it be our front of house staff who, always greet you with a smile, always are very hospitable, or whether it be our staff in 1066 House who are busy keeping everything moving along and keeping everything in order. It's an organisation filled with passion, filled with a sense of style, and real inspiring leadership that you don't just read about, you talk about, you see, you feel, and you hear it in common conversations throughout the day. And yeah, I just love it. So that's a very waffly answer, JP, to your question, but hopefully it gives you a bit of a rundown.
It allows anyone watching or listening to feel like we can feel the passion, because you're clearly very passionate. A true professional. In terms of the brand, it's as good as it gets when it comes to hospitality in the world, not just Northern Ireland. I didn't mention this, but I've celebrated my wedding in a Hastings Hotel in Ballygally. So I'm bought in,
Very good.
Massively bought in.
Very good.
I can see it.
The castle on the coast.
Yes, absolutely. It's 15 minutes away from us. We love it. I suppose when you mention leadership, of course, that's going to be so central to the role that you play, supporting leaders, pipelines of leaders. And you mentioned your leader, James McGinn. What do you believe makes him a great leader, in your opinion?
You just said passion. I'm going to throw that back at you, passion. He isn't afraid to challenge. He doesn't wait. If he sees something wrong, it's addressed. The way that he talks, I've spent my HR career trying to get leaders to do things, people orientated things that I know make a difference. The research tells us it makes a difference. And the only example that I can give you is a personal example. Being new, I put my review in James's diary. I was used to prepping, so I'd prep for my review, try to anticipate some of the feedback or questions that he might have. So thought, right, I've done my homework, grand. I'll show up and see what happens.
Yep.
And in other roles, it's always been, my review. I've always left thinking that line manager at the time didn't really prep or have any development points or good points to raise. It felt very clunky. It felt very unprepared, and I don't know whether that was because I'm used to being managed by a non-HR professional.
Yep.
And that can sometimes feel a bit scary for those top managers who are leading subject matter experts. That can feel a little bit uncomfortable for them. But James came into the room and hit the amount of prep that he had done in terms of the questions that he was going to ask me, the feedback that he was going to give me, the thoughts about the future, the thoughts about what had happened and good, bad, and indifferent. I was like, oh my word, this is, I've tried and tried and tried, and it's for others to make judgment on how successful I've been over the last decade of trying to get managers to do that. But I left that and thought, do you know what? He really wants me to succeed.
Yep.
And there's a mutual thing there that I want us to succeed together. And that's one example of not just talking or reading the book or making a speech or doing a presentation, of actually doing what we want them to do.
Yep.
It's the behavior, it's the natural ability to lead and to challenge, but also to celebrate. I mean, we work in the hospitality sector. We are great at providing famous Irish hospitality that we are renowned for. just while setting up, we've had Americans and Australians up here looking at the views. So we are famous for that hospitality, and that really does transcend into our employee experience. Not totally, but I'm yet to meet somebody would be a head of HR to say their employee experience is where it wants to be. Because will it really, JP, ever be where we want it to be?
Yeah, especially if continuous improvement is what we're striving for. You're dead in the water if you think we're here, we've arrived.
Absolutely.
We should always be thinking to the future. I hope you don't mind me asking that question because, and it wasn't a curveball. It wasn't intended. It's because of the work that I do and Sean does, and similar to yourself, working with people, supporting leaders. And I think it's always a really nice question because when we're working with leadership groups, even senior leadership groups, many times people struggle to identify, positive examples of leadership. I think we can all, as you've said yourself, we can all think of negative examples of leadership.
Absolutely.
We probably learn more from the negative experiences than we do the positive. But it's also really great to hear somebody speak so passionately about a leader in the organization who's challenging you. You done your homework, you were ready to go for your review, but yet it sounds as though it was almost like a bit of a coaching session where you've walked away a wee bit boggled going, well, okay, I've got work ahead of me here. I've got somebody, not just my ambition, but they have ambition for me also. How does that feel?
Just to go back a step, JP, I think I have definitely learned more about my own management style from a bad leader than I have good leaders or good managers. And I think that's a really important point because at the time when you're being managed by somebody who isn't gelling with you or is holding back or there's something that's not working there that you haven't put on the table, you will generally learn more from that experience, as uncomfortable as it will be at the time. And I think that's really held me to know who I am and who I want to stand for. And again, it's to my team to make their judgment on how successful I am on that. But there's a real desire for me not to be some of those things, and I think that's important to say. But there's also the degree of the now positive, but also past positive experience of being led or being managed, because we can all be managed, right? But we can't be led unless we want to be.
Yeah.
And I think one of the key things for me is understanding what I want to get out of the relationship, and also what the other person wants to get out of that relationship, and then not being afraid to challenge each other. And James has this saying, which at the time I was like, I don't know how I feel about that, but actually I feel about it now really positive, because we need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Yeah. Because that is the only way that we think outside of the box, or we push boundaries, or we innovate, because people naturally think about innovation and change. We are famous for our Irish hospitality.
Yeah.
Do we need to change everything? Absolutely not. But how can we get that 5%? How can we get that 1%? How can we leave that guest thinking, holy moly, that was a great experience and I'm going to shout about it? How can we increase that 5%, that 1%? What are those little bits that we can do, whether it's a beverage or whether it's a bedroom or whether it's an experience like the observatory? And I mean, we're sitting now in Ireland's tallest bar with views across Belfast City. There is no other product on the island like this because of that extra innovation that really exists. And I think combined with positive leadership, ambition and innovation, they are the secrets to success. And I didn't really feel that until I came to work for Hastings Hotels. I knew it. I'd read books. I'd seen, this is the way that it should be done. Had that idea in my head. Now I see it in reality.
You have alluded to the awesome views and the room that we're in. It's just outstanding. It's hard not to be inspired by the city. We were chatting about architecture, and we were chatting. You give us the full tour, and I'm from the city. But
And I'm not.
But you rightly and so eloquently described certain areas of the city. Give us a mini tour of the 360-degree view that you have. People who work in this site, I imagine, but you can give me more insight. There's a pride potentially that comes along with working in a building like this, not just for Hastings Group. Potentially, you're working across the whole group. Would you say that this being such a landmark, and as you say, there's nowhere on the island like this? Is there a pride from the employees, not just from this site, but from other sites, that this is in the collection?
Absolutely, and I mean, you seen that as soon as you arrived downstairs that the general manager is there to greet you. Yeah. That wasn't prepared. I was on my way down to get you. He's there. There's a very sense of pride, but I also think that as we work here for quite a number of days, whether you're a full-time member of staff, whether you're a part-time member of staff, you do tend to get desensitized a little bit to the awesomeness of what the observatory is and the awesomeness of what the Grand Central is. But then when you are with a guest and you see that they've come from Australia, for example, the guest that I just spoke to, you can see the excitement of him taking a video of the views and talking about a cocktail and talking about a beer and giving his grandchildren a view tour on his phone. You can see that excitement. Yeah. And it's on us as Hastings staff to really help bring that to life, and that really then gets you more excited about it. Yeah. Because you've got the knowledge of having done that so many times. It's other people's experience and other people's excitement, whether they're from West Belfast or whether they're from Western Australia. It really doesn't make any difference. You are on a platform to almost perform. One of our members of staff from the Europa who is studying to be a PhD, she came in to talk to me the other day about drama in hospitality and how we can learn more from theatre training. And I was like, that is so true, because as soon as you walk out of that door, no matter what is happening behind the scenes, you are there for the guest. Yep. Whether you are the head of HR or whether you are a food and beverage member of staff, you are there to make that guest's journey as comfortable and as exciting and as relaxed as they want it to be.
Just to bring it back to your experiences in different sectors, and obviously in terms of HR practices, we know that there are laws, employment laws, and how does it compare? How does it compare having a little bit of experience in retail with the tech sector, and then now firmly back in hospitality? Would you say there's a difference, or how does it compare?
Culturally, there's definitely a difference, and the challenges are very different. But one of the insights that I have as the vice chair of the CIPD locally is that I can see cross sector from that perspective right now and from past. And there's a lot of sectors there's a lot of similarities between sectors. We really struggle to recruit some positions, in particular creative positions such as culinary arts, etc. Yep. Tech have the same issue with software engineers. Exactly the same issue. So the tactic that you deploy to overcome that is slightly different. And that's where really experienced leaders like James McGinn, like some of our general managers that are in the organisation can really help to shape what that tactic looks like. But the problem is generally the same. If you think about retail and hospitality, they are pretty similar in terms of how the contracts are structured, the working time directives, the working hours, etc. You do have some more similarities between retail and hospitality, but that doesn't mean that there's no similarities with tech either, because tech is, again, that flexibility, but comes with other challenges of you've got hybrid remote working. How do you build a culture? It's difficult enough with having 8 sites across Northern Ireland to build a cohesive culture, and there's even an argument, well, do we need to have a cohesive culture across all 8 sites? Can they not be individual and bespoke to those? So that's definitely a question. But it is harder to do that, much harder to do that when people are working in isolation or remote working. It is a little bit harder to do that. There are ways to do it, but it's more challenging. So there are things that each sector has unique, but there is so much that we can learn from each other. And one of the organisations that we work with, I said, you know what, they've got that problem too. Let's talk to them and see what they do, and how can we borrow and make to fit our sector. We in the hospitality sector probably have, unfairly in my view, a bad rep for long hours, a myth, no breaks, no holidays, etc. It's all a myth. Yes, at Christmas time, at peak season, there are long hours. But is it boring work? Absolutely not. Is it fun work? Absolutely. Are you supported to take a break? Absolutely. Do you get your days off? Absolutely. Do you have flexibility to go and take the kids to school? Absolutely. And do you have great fun? I can't underestimate that word I can't underestimate that word enough, because there is nothing better than on a Friday night in December in the Europa, the place is swinging, people are enjoying themselves, people are happy, and you're in the middle of it. And it's like, wow, I get paid to do this. This is pretty cool.
We were chatting about, I was giving a bit of my background being from the industry. I'm so passionate about the industry. Sean and I are ambassadors of Springboard charity for hospitality.
We had them at the Clodden quite recently.
Okay, yes. Katrina and Sharon.
Yes.
So good friends of ours, and we've worked on projects and continue to work on projects with them. You're right. Hospitality does get a bad rep sometimes, and it's you mentioned something that was always a big selling point to me. I remember being quite early on from the similar sort of background with movie house cinemas, and I remember speaking to my general manager, and she was coming in on a shift, and I asked her a question. I was quite young, and I asked her, you know, you're coming in on a shift at 5 p.m. You're going to be here till probably about 12. Does that ever, you know, she was getting close to retirement age, so I was maybe a bit brass, but I sort of said, has that ever got in the way? And she said, absolutely not. She said, if I was 9 to 5, if I needed a doctor's appointment, I would have to take a half day or a full day, potentially, depending on what's going on. She said, I can just change my shifts around. She says, I do the rotas, so as long as everyone's okay with it, I will do an evening shift, and I do whatever I need to do. I do my shopping. There's a lifestyle. She says your lifestyle can be much better. It can be shaped around you. So I can't speak highly enough about that. You've mentioned something that I was going to bring up. You're the vice chair of the CIPD locally. What does that role entail for you?
Advocating for people professionals, whether that be on a stage in Manchester or anywhere, is about really trying to not only support, learn from. Like I try and give back, but geez, I learn way more from other people's conversations than I'd necessarily do from myself. So I find one of my biggest roles is really speaking to the up and coming HR talent that are in university right now or are studying their CIPD qualifications elsewhere, talking to them and seeing the people professionals of the future. That sounds very cheesy, but seeing them and understanding the questions that they have, because the questions that they ask me make me think way more than the questions that I have for them.
Yeah.
So that's a big part, but also advocating for the profession locally and nationally, because Northern Ireland's a unique place. A lot of our regulations, a lot of our laws are different.
Yeah.
So that adds complexity that companies look to people professionals to navigate. But also we have a different health challenge here. We have a different mental health challenge here. We also have the unique opportunity to look to another place, to the south, to see what are they actually doing that's a bit exciting? What can we steal? Because that is a different workplace culture.
Yep.
I mean, I'm big into rugby, and even if you look at the IRFU, that has a completely different culture as an all-Ireland organisation. And the things that you can learn just from looking at those different case studies and those different organisations of how they manage in different territories is really quite interesting, because then you have to then balance that with UK legislation, which isn't always easy, especially when we haven't gone through an extended period of political stability. It has been a real challenge seeing people over the other side of the Irish Sea move forward in terms of, day one right to flexible working, for example. That's a really quite a significant perk for the employee. But it almost feels like we need to constantly review what is coming out of the UK central government and seeing how does that then apply to Northern Ireland. And one of the key things that the CIPD does is there's a policy expert called Marek. So shout out to Marek. He does a really good job at really taking stuff that comes out of Westminster and thinking, right, okay, how does that apply in Northern Ireland? Because a lot of it doesn't. But now we have an executive back. Now there's legislation coming out. Hopefully people's employment can move forward, but also hopefully employers can move forward in terms of really understanding how we make employment work for working lives. And the CIPD strapline is making work. And I think that's what the profession is aimed to do, is making work for people. To go back to the top of this, the first question you asked me, JP, if we can make work so people have good lives, they have fun, they are happy, healthy and thriving, that is ultimately everybody's ambition, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. You've mentioned rugby, and I do have one or two wee questions around that, but in terms of that sort of mentoring role that you play as, not sort of, the mentoring role that you play as part of being vice chair with the CIPD, what are the challenges, or maybe what are the goals, two-prong approach, to the younger people coming through, or anyone who's a member there? What do you find comes up for you when you're working with people like that?
A number of different challenges. And again, I think this goes back to sector. And there are definitely formal mentoring conversations that I'm having with various people, professionals that I either through the CIPD mentoring scheme or individually that I've known for a number of years that continue to chat to me in an informal way. I think one of the big substantial challenges over the last couple of years has been really dealing with mental health. We are not mental health practitioners. We are not healthcare professionals in general. So really dealing with that has been really, really difficult for people, professionals, because we all have mental health, right?
Yeah.
But some people, some people break their leg. Some people have ill mental health periods where they need to be supported, and that is a real challenge. And one of the ways that we've addressed that at Hastings, through one of my really great colleagues who has spearheaded the whole thing, she has put us all through mental health first aid training, so we can really spot those signs and feel that we've got the skills and the ability to signpost people and to help them to manage and signpost to various resources. So that's definitely been a challenge, especially for the younger people professional, because dealing with somebody in trauma or in a moment of crisis is really emotional and really taxing on them personally. And being in HR, nobody wants HR at the party, right? Nobody wants, really, there's almost this stigma of, HR are here, that's not us at all. But ultimately, people professionals need other people professionals to talk to, because they can't naturally talk to others. So that's a big part. The other challenge really has, this is like buzzword bingo now, JP, because I've mentioned the pandemic and I'm just about to mention Brexit.
Get it all out.
Brexit has been a significant issue for people professionals in Northern Ireland, more so because of immigration as well. We really rely on immigration in a positive way, and immigration can be seen politically, socially as really negative, but actually it's really positive. I mean, I live in Northern Ireland and I'm Welsh. I'm born and bred 100% Welsh. So, I wasn't born here, and came here and work in the job that I do in this city. But immigration provides us with an opportunity to go and explore new cuisine, new ideas around different ways of doing things. And we've just literally shut the door, which not only has restricted us from a recruitment perspective, it's also really hurt the wider economy from a retention basis.
Yep.
Because we've just lost really talented talent, and the former First Minister Arlene Foster and the former Deputy First Minister Martin McGuinness did a really fantastic job at getting foreign direct investment.
Yep.
Like, regardless of what your political view is, those two were phenomenal at getting foreign direct investment into Northern Ireland. They went to America, they went to China, and you've only got to look at the Titanic Quarter to see how good a job they did.
We can see it from here.
One of the real issues that we had as an economy is that we didn't have the skills to service it.
Yep.
We then left the European Union, and now you've got this boiling pot of great opportunity, but not enough skill to service it. And that's just a shame. But one of the things that we can do as humans and as parents and as brothers and sisters is we can have those conversations at a dinner table on a Tuesday night about what GCSE options they're going to choose, what A levels they're going to do they need to go to university, can they go to do an apprenticeship. I'm very lucky to have 3 amazing nephews and a niece who are this is going to make me sound really old, but I am the youngest of 3. So my nephews, one is still in secondary education, and the other 2, one has just finished university, and the other one is in an apprenticeship. Both completely, they're brothers, but they are both completely different personalities. But they've chosen the right thing for them.
Yeah. And
I have no doubt that they'll be successful. But it just goes to show that you don't have to go to 3rd level education to have fun and be happy. I mean, those boys have more holidays than I have hot dinners. One of them's in Egypt right now. But you just see so many different paths open up. And what we can do in those roles that we play around the dinner table is make sure that, do you know what, there's opportunities in tech. Yes, there's opportunities in hospitality. Yes, there's opportunities in X, Y, and Z, because we've always had this mentality drilled into us by our parents that the job is for life. And you need to go and be a doctor, you need to go be a lawyer, or you need to go into accountancy because they are jobs for life.
Yeah.
However, that's really not a thing anymore. We can explore different career trajectories. We can have squiggly careers. We can try this and try that. But equally, there are different avenues that are right for individuals.
I think with a 2-year-old myself, I think that the future, certainly when I was growing up, a big aim was put on university.
Absolutely.
Not in my household, but for our age group. I just found that was the focus, and many age groups before, like you alluded to. But now I look at it like having opportunities at his feet around skilled work, being a mechanic, being a builder, whatever that is, because I have friends, like you say, who are working for themselves. Some of them, honestly, yes, when they were a bit younger, didn't have the kids yet, they were working 7 days a week, but they're now in a position where they have employees, they've built something for themselves, and not that you need to go down the entrepreneurial route, but skills like we're talking about within the industry, depending on the industry or sector you're in, especially something that you can have a bit of fun with, or travel with. You know, I seen an advert on YouTube for Australia. I think it's going to be in Europa. Am I right in saying that? I might be making that up. But there's an event coming, and it's essentially trying to get people from Belfast and Northern Ireland as a whole to go to the northern part of Australia, because they have a skills gap. And I can only imagine if James, my son, was of an age group, I would not want to be a barrier to that if he had a skill or was willing to learn a skill that they find valuable, because it's a big world. I suppose that makes me think of hospitality automatically, because that's where I come from, where, you know, no matter where you go in the world, you're always going to need somebody who can support, whether it's in the kitchen, front of house, you know, housekeeping. There's so much opportunity for young people. So it's quite humbling, especially as a parent, to look to the future and be hopeful that way. I
mean, you just have to look. You know, my head always goes towards the kitchen. I don't know what that says about my waistline, but you know, our chefs are incredibly talented. And you know, if you just turn on TV on a Saturday morning, you'll see some really high end chefs. We were really lucky to go and taste Richard Corrigan's food back last year, and you just think, wow, this is another level.
Yeah.
And their stories are really inspiring. And go back to James, as in James McGinn. His career has been, from a hospitality perspective, has been exceptional. From you know, going to university, maybe becoming an accountant, deciding it wasn't for him, working in London Heathrow, going to America, coming back to I never say this properly, but apologies for my Welsh accent, Killy Clocker, to his family business, and then coming to work at Hastings 25 plus years ago, and is now, you know, you can't walk down the street unless somebody's saying there's James from the TV.
Yeah.
So it just gives you an idea of what a hospitality career can really do for you, whether that be, as you said, in accommodation and housekeeping and that creative element, or whether you want to be an executive head chef or the general manager of the world famous Europa. The world is really your oyster. But I also think that we shouldn't limit our young people to what they want to do and to try new things, because ultimately they'll decide. And I think my two eldest nephews are two really good examples of that. One's gone and lived his best life in university in Cardiff and is now on the hunt for a graduate placement, and the other, thankfully, much to my father's relief, I'm sure, has gone into the steelworks, which obviously, in being from South Wales, I was the first generation of my family not to be a South Walian steelworker. So Thomas has thankfully took up that flag and is now carrying on the generation steelworker frame. But
it keeps going.
it keeps going, yeah, definitely. But there's definitely a sense of you can choose the right path for you, and I think that's what we've got to do as a people profession, is really help educate the wider society of how to make work for them, but also how we can help parents, family members in general, mates. How can we help them have a conversation around what work looks like for that person?
You mentioned rugby.
Yes.
You're a rugby referee. How, or maybe why, did you decide to be a referee?
I love the game of rugby. You've opened a can of worms now, JP. You've opened a can of worms. Being Welsh, right, you tend to lean towards rugby union. But it is a game of 80 minutes. You've got 30 players. In most cases, they are bigger than me. Some locals, for example, you've got some Fijians that live and play rugby here as well. Mm-hmm. They can be pretty scary. But there is nothing better than a Saturday afternoon, chucking my kit bag in the boot, driving to wherever, to run around a field for 80 minutes and stop 30 blokes from taking each other's heads off. But no, the game of rugby is something that I really enjoy being a fan of, first and foremost. I love the game. I love the technicality of it. I love the scrum. Getting very technical now, but and after the pandemic, I shifted a load of weight and became a bit of a quicker runner, and thought, right, let's go and try this, and took up the whistle with the Ulster Society of Rugby Football Referees, and I've really enjoyed the few seasons that I've done so far, and looking forward to another positive season next year.
Good for you. I think it's awesome. You can see the passion, and you're already passionate, so I could see it spiked there. Definitely a can of worms. Has your role as a referee, has it influenced your role as head of people and culture? No,
I think the other way around. I think being a people professional has really helped me to think about how I communicate on a Saturday. The great thing about rugby union is that the foundations of the game, or the values of the game, are all based around respect. And there are 3 other values as well, but they are really based around respect. So, very recently I was in the middle for a local derby in the west of the province. Is that right? No, the east of the province. I get my north, east, west, and south and west right in a minute. A local derby in the east, and the front row was fairly old in terms of age, and that already thinks, all right, okay, I'm going to referee somebody who I'm going to look up to and whatnot. And then I pinged him on Scrum for the engagement, and he looked at me and was like, "Sir." I was like, "Oh my word, this is just different. Why are you calling me sir? I should be calling you sir." I was like, "Back you go." And instantly, back they go. It's not football where there's a little bit more friction, shall we say, in a positive way. Yeah. But it's really helped me to be clear with what I want. Mm-hmm. I drive to a game and think about the picture that I want to see at a breakdown. Mm-hmm. I drive to a game and think, right, what am I going to say to the captains? I drive to a game and think, right, okay, what's my first scrum going to be? I'm a keen believer in less is more. Yeah. So I'm not one of these referees that, gather all 30 players in before kick-off and talk to them about the scrum engagement and talk to them about what, Jesus, they're gonna listen to me and hear me enough over the next 80 minutes. Yeah. I don't need to talk to them. I need to check their studs and do the toss and answer any questions that the captains have. But apart from that, I let them crack on. And then during the game, I need to be really clear with what I'm seeing, because we all want to see a product. We all want to see running rugby right. So you can ping anything you want, because literally there's always going to be somebody off their feet, or there's always going to be somebody coming in from the side, or there's always going to be somebody with their hands in the ruck, or there's always going to be something that you can technically ping. But the magic is creating something that flows quite quickly and is quite exciting. So if that means I have to shout 12 blue, get out from out the side, and he comes out from out the side, but I'm not going to ping him for going in the side because he's cleared the ruck and hasn't interfered with the ball. So it's about creating something that's fun, that's exciting, that you think, oh, this is a great game. And you also don't want to be the centerpiece. So if there's focus on you, you're having a bad game. So you just want to blend into the background, which is quite nice. So it's being a people professional has really helped me think about my communication. Yep. And how I do that in split seconds. Mm-hmm. The one difficulty is that I'm quite a reflective person in how I make a decision. Definitely in work, I'm quite reflective. But when you've got 30 16-year-olds or 30 somethings all looking at you, the pressure, the time. So what I do as a referee is think about, okay, how can I make the right decision? And it may seem on points that somebody's saying, "Ref, he's off his feet." And then 10 seconds later, I've got my arm in the air because I think he's off his feet. Mm-hmm. It's not the fact that I'm being influenced. Maybe I am subconsciously, but I'm looking at what I'm looking at and looking at the picture, checking whether I need to stop the game. Yep. And if I need to stop the game, I'll stop the game. But I'm trying to get the ball moving, trying to get it flow. So it's not that you're listening to others and their commentary, which sometimes you need to have a word with the captain to stop. You're trying to make the right decision. You're trying to referee the game within the laws of the game, but also you're trying to have a bit of fun and trying to make sure that these 30 lads or girls are enjoying it, but also going home safe, because it's not going to pay anybody's mortgage, right? Unless you're a professional, which the likelihood, JP, of me refereeing a professional rugby player is very, very slim. So we're not paying anybody's mortgage, so we need to make sure that we all go home safe at the end of the 80 minutes.
It's very much a leadership role.
Being a referee.
Listening to you speak about that and how you said there, I don't want to be the centre because they're going to listen to me enough throughout the game, and you let them play the game. It's very much a leadership role, and it makes me think, in terms of your leadership style, if we bring it back to your roles professionally, has your leadership style evolved throughout your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think necessarily I referee as I lead. Absolutely not. Because I think I'm yet to meet somebody I'm yet to meet teams that always love a referee's decision. But if you're clear about what you want to see and you're clear in your communication, I think that transcends into life, whether it's my wife or whether it's a colleague that I'm talking to. It does transcend into a lot of areas of life, and that's really valuable. I think my leadership style has always naturally been to be a coach. Mm-hmm. But I have come to the realization that coaching doesn't always work or is not the most appropriate thing to use. So where I would naturally push something back and ask a question, I am having to have more of a conversation or more of a direction with things. And I think this is definitely the first role that I've done where, I am expected to have an opinion on wage budgets, on financial information, which is really exciting as well, because that's teaching me a new skill. It's helping me learn. It's helping me expand. So my communication has changed as I've moved into a different role. I'm also seen as a member of what we call the Opcom team or the exec team. So that comes with a certain level of apprehension sometimes. So I go out of my way to make sure that people don't feel apprehensive around me. And, I will smile. I will ask about their day. I will make time to make sure that I speak to them, because it's important that I try and break this facade that people shouldn't talk to me, or people, all of that jazz. That's just totally not me at all. So like calling me Mr. Rees, there's nothing worse than you can do. I'm Rob, you can call me Rob.
Yeah.
Yes, let's call the guest Mr., Mrs., Madam, Sir, but you can call me Rob. I'm here to help. And I think that's one of the things that is really important to me, is being part of a team. Yes, you are paid to do a job, and my job is a certain job that I do, but we are all part of the same team. And whether that is me helping the concierge downstairs with tour bags before you arrived at 8:45 this morning, I was taking suitcases out of a lift. He said, "Oh no, I can do it. And it was like, you're by yourself. I can help you move these 20 odd suitcases." Or whether it be, helping a food and beverage member of staff run some food. We are in it together.
Yep.
We all are in it for the guest. We are all in it to provide that Irish hospitality with style and with excellence. And if this organisation, this massive organisation that is Hastings Hotels, do one thing is, and we do lots of things really well, one of our biggest things that we do exceptionally well is obsess about that guest. If I don't obsess about the guest, what example does that set? So I will.
Good timing.
Form.
We can cut that out.
So if I don't do that, then what does that say about me as a leader? But equally, I will go my extra mile with a member of staff too. I will ask.
Somebody's testing something. Hopefully they're testing something.
Yeah. Because we really don't want to walk down 23 flights of stairs.
No.
But if I don't do it, what does that set? So I will always be personable with the guest. I will always make sure that I'm smiling, and we have these 4 golden rules. Look at me, smile at me, talk to me, thank me. And they are so simple and so straightforward. Like, let's all do it, because if we don't do it, the guest is going to have a negative experience. But I also take that in my role as well to mean that, you know, I have to look, thank, smile, talk to a member of staff, regardless of who they are, what they do. Do I know their name? I will talk to them whether I know their name or not, because that's also important to me as a leader, that people have the opportunity to see that I'm not this big scary HR person that they think's gonna come in and have a difficult conversation with them. But also as a leader, it's not being afraid to have those difficult conversations, because people respect clarity and people respect knowing where they stand. Mm-hmm. And being in an environment that's 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, you're working with the same people, gossip, etc. happens. Yep. It's human. Yep. And one of the core elements of my job is helping to, you know, stamp out any rumors, to, you know, if I've heard something, I will ask the question, where did this come from? Okay, is it a thing? No, it's made up. Right, okay, let's crack on. Because if you don't address that, it just encapsulates and grows and grows and grows. So one of the ways that we've tackled some of our cultural things is the re-establishment of our town halls. So my colleague Matt, who's our head of marketing, and myself travelled across all of our sites over the last couple of weeks and did a bit of a presentation, and then basically opened the floor and said what questions you have. But we also provided the staff with Slido during the presentation, so they could ask us any questions they wanted to anonymously. And some of the questions we were getting great crack out of them, which was fab. But there was a lot of those questions that were just burning people's back of their heads and didn't think they could ask them. And I'm like, yes, you can totally ask them, and here's the answer. Yeah. And we've got one left to do in 1066 House for our central support team next Friday. But it has been a really worthwhile exercise and something that we'll continue to do in each quarter. And I think that goes to the core of my leadership is around communication, role modeling the behavior that we want to see, because behavior breeds behavior, right? Mm-hmm. And providing people with clarity. So you're in a culture where people aren't second guessing things and people aren't going, oh, I wonder if this is happening. Yeah. Etc.
You may know, as part of this podcast, Sean, Jason and I, we've run a lot. We've run people's information, including yours, through ChatGPT.
Oh, right, okay.
And one of the
I'm scared.
It's a signature question, so we don't know what the question is. Jason gives it to ChatGPT, asks it to learn everything it needs to know about you, and then it spits out a question. So I have a question from ChatGPT specifically, and it has asked, if you could initiate one major change in HR practices across industries today, what would it be, and why do you believe that it's important or crucial?
That is a big question.
It's a big question.
ChatGPT. One change I would make. There's so many things going through my head right now, JP, but I'll probably give you a couple of answers if that's okay to the question. I think, first of all, I would look at work being part of the economy and part of the society. People see the economy as, we're in a recession, we're in this, we've got to pay too much tax. Or no, the economy is how much money you have in your bank account to come to the Grand Central and have lunch. Yep. That is the economy. Yep. And the choices that we make help us all. So I think I would change how that is framed. So it is really centered around that whole collectiveness. So the political instability, Brexit, you can list them. We've all got quite insular. But I learn way more from people who are completely different to me than I do from my sisters who are quite similar to me. They do very different jobs and have different lives, but it is people who are Australian, who are from South America, who are French, who are Irish, who are British, who are whatever. They are different to me, and I learn more from that. And I think that's one thing that we have to change as a society, is that actually difference is quite good. And I'm a big fan of the third way, and I think the great example of the third way is the 1998 Good Friday Agreement, where you've got my way, JP's way. Well, actually, what about if there's a third way that's better than my way and better than JP's way? Surely we both win. I think so. That's one thing I would definitely change from a people professional.
Compromise or collaboration, maybe.
Don't you feel that compromise has got a dirty word? Like, how many times a day do we compromise with each other? But people feel like they lose part of themselves if they compromise, and that's completely not the case.
Nope, you're right.
I compromise with my wife daily and I'm still myself. So
marriage is compromise.
But why can't we do that with each other?
Yeah.
And why can't we also disagree? Because I love disagreeing in a really positive way, because that sparks some really good conversations, which then comes to that third way. And I think that's one thing that we don't teach our young people, we don't talk about. And one of the things from bringing it back to a people professional or a HR slant is, I think we need to give business leaders, we need to give subject matter experts, creatives, the ability to disagree in a positive way. And that's one way we can really influence the economy. I think the other way, the second answer to your question is, and some people will say this is semantics, but for me it's not. Scrap the word HR. Has far too many negative connotations.
That's deep.
HR are coming to see me. I must be getting the sack.
Yeah.
I've thought that in the past.
Yeah. We all have, I think.
And there is nothing worse than a people professional going into a conversation and having a really positive conversation about growth, about development, about opportunity. And yet there's a negative connotation of HR, and HR are coming to sack me. It's like, guys, really? So I would scrap that term completely. We are there from a cultural perspective, and we're also there from a people perspective. So let's call ourselves that. It isn't semantics. It's making people confident. It's making people comfortable, and it's helping people to do the best job that they can do. So why are we still calling ourselves HR? And I know I do it interchangeably.
Yeah.
And one of my people and culture managers pick me up on it all the time. But it's so ingrained in me. But that's one of the things that we really need to change as a profession. And we also need to get better at being more commercial. Again, one thing that James helps me do really well, because we aren't there to be roadblocks, sit in ivory towers, whatever the terminology you want to use. We are there to be, I don't want to say business partners because I hate that, with equal measure, but we are there to be part of the business. If we do not know how to lay out the grand ballroom in the Europa the same way the team do, not to the degree of technicality that they do, but if we can't roll our sleeves up and roll some tables out and put some chairs around the table, etc. If we can't talk to a guest, if we're arm's length away from the systems, the way that we make money, then we're not really that effective. And that's what comes with the connotation of HR, is HR is seen, oh God, we go to them if there's a problem. So that needs to change, and needs to change quite quickly. also from a professional perspective, need to think about our own expertise. In 5 years' time, the people professional will be completely different. You've just asked me a question from ChatGPT. I mean, that in itself will have a huge impact on the world of work. So how do we make work work?
Yeah.
And we need to take a real good look at ourselves in terms of what the next 5 years skills requirement will be for a people professional, because it will be very different, JP. I am telling you now for a fact, it will be seismically different in the next 5 to 10 years. So how do we get ready for that? So taking a good look at ourselves and thinking about the skills that we have, but also not being scared of automation or not being scared of technology, because there is nothing I enjoy the least is about paperwork and admin. It's like, it sends me crazy. So we should really enhance and grab hold of these opportunities to think about how do we eliminate some of that scut work? Because we need to keep people safe. We need to be legally compliant. We need to attract talent. We need to do X, Y, and Z. But how can we do that in a smarter, more efficient way? So there are really three answers. I think first answer, definitely economy. Think more globally, not so isolated or not so insular. Learn from other people. Be more diverse. And challenge each other more. Two, around technology and automation, and the big one, get rid of HR.
I think you may have answered the final question already, but I'll ask you it all the same, and you might pick one of those. This is what we call the finisher. This is the same question we ask every guest. Just like the same question we ask at the start, we ask the same question at the end, and we call it the finisher because it's where we want people to finish off with the podcast, and it's not closing remarks, but it gives an insight into who you are and what you would do if you had this type of influence or power. So thinking about the local business landscape, if you had the power to change or add one thing to the Northern Ireland budget tomorrow, what would it be and why?
You say that I've already answered the question, JP. I'm not sure that I have, because it's a pretty big question. If I can, I'll again take it in a couple of parts, because you're making me think about one thing. I think if you go to Wales, for example, I'm a very passionate Welshman. I love everything there is to do with Wales. But we have a really bad time getting away from, is that in England? Is this bad? Because we haven't got the global recognition. Northern Ireland, for right or wrong reasons, has a global rep, right?
Yep.
Everybody knows Belfast. Well, let's lean into it. Let's use that platform to talk about how great it is to go to the North Coast. Let's talk about the great opportunities that lie within Northern Ireland to work in hospitality, to work in some of the most magnificent buildings. You talk about the castle on the coast. Talk about fine dining, hospitality, great sea views. You can wake up, you can jump in the sea.
World class.
Like, let's use the platform that we've got. Let's use the reputation that Belfast and beyond has, and really spread the word about it. That's what I would do if I was Deirdre Hegarty. I would do that right now.
Yeah.
I suppose if I could add something to the budget, from a human perspective, I think it would have to be to do with healthcare.
Yeah.
One of my big sisters and my wife are in healthcare, and I think they do a phenomenal job.
Yep.
And I'm very proud of the healthcare professionals that they both are. And I think there needs to be more, whether we need to pay a little bit more out of our salaries. I know that's a bit controversial because it means tax going up, but if you look at Japan, if you look at Tokyo, I mean, I'm not into trains. Trains aren't my thing, but those trains are seriously sexy. Their infrastructure is incredible.
Yep.
Where have we gone wrong? What have we, we've got some of the highest taxes going. Where's the investment? So I know I started by saying healthcare.
Yeah.
But I think we need to relook at how our public sector is funded and think about not just how we can maintain things like health, things like infrastructure, but how can we push the boundary? How can we innovate? How can we make change? How can we, move things forward from that perspective? Because there is very much a limited amount of resource to keep the trains on the tracks, but how can we make the train better? That's a good analogy. I'm going to use that, JP. That. It just came out off the top of my head. But I think that's what I would do. I would really lean into our reputation as a province, as a place. Use that to our advantage, because by God, we've got a great advantage there. I mean, I used the Wales example to compare and contrast. Second point, absolutely think about, right, okay, how do we make things better, not just maintain it or maintain the status quo, which feels like we're trying to do at the moment with the limited budgets. And I would just say, don't be afraid to make the tough decision, because leaders need to be able to make the tough decision. And that's why they're in the offices that they're in. And if it's for the right reasons, me personally, from my perspective, I would support them, regardless of their political view, regardless of their ilk. If they're taking the tough decision for the right reasons, I would absolutely support them.
Rob, genuinely, I think I could speak to you all day. I have loads more questions I would like to ask you, but for the purposes of this episode, thank you so much.
My
for your
absolute
time,
pleasure.
your energy, your passion. It just resonates. Thank you.
My pleasure. Cheers, JP.